11, we're going to do something a little bit different today as I do now. So we're moving on to paper 2 from the English language course. Now we've touched on this slightly before Christmas, but we hadn't done a lot on it, and obviously with the situation being as it is at the moment and us not knowing when school's going to reopen, I think we just need to plough ahead now with the paper 2 stuff. So our starter today is a spot the difference. Okay, and I know you're probably going to be like, what's she making us do? Why is she making us do a spot the difference? But there's relevance to everything that I do. So what I'd like you to do to start off with is I'd like you to try and spot the differences on the pictures, okay? And then I'd like you to try and write a summary sentence that tells me one of the differences between the two images, okay? What you've also got down here are some helpful comparison terminologies so that you can have some support when writing your sentence. So the first thing you need to do is identify the differences between the two images, and then the second thing I'd like you to do is write me one sentence that summarises the differences between the two images, please. Okay then, so you're probably wondering why I got you to do a spot the difference and probably thinking that I've lost my mind during lockdown. That's not what's happened. So the reason that I got you to do a spot the difference is because it's very similar to the skills that they're asking you to use when you do paper 2 question 2, okay? So I gave you two images that were the same. You're going to be given two texts that are on the same topic. So that's where the spot the difference comes in, okay? You're going to be asked to look at those two texts and think about their similarities and their differences. When you look at that spot the difference, that's exactly what you're doing. You're looking at their similarities, you're thinking about their differences. Then you're going to be asked to compare them in a written manner. Well, when you wrote your sentence that compared the two spot the difference images, that's exactly what you do. You compared their similarities or their differences. So what I'm trying to get across to you is actually paper 2 question 2 for language is very simple in what it's asking you to do. It's asking you to pick out the similarities or the differences between the two texts that you're reading and to summarise those in a response. And the reason that it asks you to do that is because it's focusing on this word here, so inference, okay? So an inference is what you work out from a quotation by reading between the lines. So it's thinking about the word black and not just thinking that it's a colour, but thinking that it relates to death and sorrow and sadness and all of those connections that we make to it. So it's reading beyond, it's thinking in depth. Okay, and it tests your inference skills because you don't need to explain the effect of the language, but you just need to comment on what the quotation is telling you and what it's suggesting to you. So for example, if it said the snow fell elegantly on the ground, that's what the quotation says. My inference could be that the snow was not threatening and it created a picturesque scene. So it's not going to cause anyone harm. Yeah? So I'm reading into the fact that it fell elegantly, it's not pounding down, it's not coming in hailstones, and I'm suggesting that it's not threatening and it's creating a picturesque scene. Okay, if it was the snow engulfed the surroundings in its grip, then I might potentially suggest that this is more threatening and it is going to be harmful to the people around. So dependent upon the quotation obviously depends on your inference. So this question is worth 8 marks and you should spend between 8 to 10 minutes responding to it. So make sure you've got this information down in your book, okay, so that you know all of this when you go to approach that question. So I'm hoping that I picked an interesting text choice this week. On Netflix, I found a weird program the other day that said the world's toughest prisons, and I'm really hooked at the moment. So I thought, why not bring that into the classroom with me? So our two texts today are going to be about prisons, but obviously it might be that you know quite a lot about them or you know quite a little about them. So I've just added in a little video for you to have a watch of that just talks you through a prison, and I just want you to think about whether there's anything that you learn from this video about prisons, or whether there's anything that's in the video that you already know that you think might be relevant to today's task, okay? So in a moment, I am going to give you two texts, okay? And I am going to ask you to select and synthesize evidence from those two texts to respond to a question. So we're just going to have a quick look at the question, okay? So this bit here needs copying down into your books for me, please. So paper 2, question 2. So you need to refer to source A and source B for this question. Both sources are about different institutions and the people in them. Institutions just means prisons, okay? They've just used a different word for it. Use details from both sources to write a summary of the differences, okay? So we're thinking about these institutions and we're thinking about the differences between them, okay? So what we're going to do now is we're going to read the texts and we're going to think about those differences that perhaps come out of the two. So this is source A. You would get 10 minutes in the exam to read through it, and then I want you to think about what you learn about this institution and what you learn about the people in it, okay? This is all we're going to do this lesson, so I don't want us to overwhelm ourselves, but I really do want you to concentrate on the fact that it's asking you to think about the prison itself and the people in it. So what do you learn about them? What do you learn about the prison itself? So make sure you've got this in front of you. If obviously you can't print it off, then just write your quotations in your book for me. If you can print it off and annotate it, that would be much better. And then we're going to use this in our next lesson, obviously, to help us to produce a response and to understand how to produce a response. So make sure you don't rush through it, because there's nothing worse than being sat there with nothing to do. But this should take you a good 20 minutes, to read it properly and think about the annotations on it. So once you've done this, make sure you answer today's Show My Homework quiz, and then I will see you tomorrow for the rest of our prisons lesson.